Hello and welcome to yet another positively enriching episode of Smart Talks by Lincoln University of Business Management. My name is Amaan Iqbal Ibrahim and I'll be your host for today. In the ever-evolving world of work, where collaboration, innovation, and employee well-being are paramount, psychological safety has emerged as a cornerstone concept. It's not just about compliance or maintaining appearances. It's about fostering an environment where individuals feel comfortable, confident, and empowered to voice their ideas, share their concerns, and be their authentic selves. And to help us understand how we, as budding professionals, can ensure we play our part in creating a healthy environment, we have the one and only Hassan Habib. With an impressive trajectory spanning 17 plus years, Hassan, known by his digital signature, Hassan Speaks, stands out as a fervent advocate and seasoned practitioner in the realms of diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging, and well-being. His leadership has been instrumental in steering D&I councils within multinational corporations, positioning him as a trusted voice in human-centered design thinking. In the world of psychological safety, Hassan's unparalleled energy has seen him craft transformative workshops, launch pioneering initiatives, and rally teams towards a unified vision. Welcome to our podcast today, Hassan.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
How are you doing?
Pleasure. I'm great. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing great as well. Thank you. So, starting off the bat, starting with understanding psychological safety, how would you define the term psychological safety and why is it considered the backbone of a successful and supportive organizational culture?
Absolutely. See, in order to understand the definition first, let's take a step back and understand the history, perhaps behind it, or the elements, and why is it necessary as well. So psychological safety is something that promotes organization culture towards innovation as well, because in innovation, you need to have that kind of breathing space. And while we see, especially post-pandemic, has been the case that the change has been multifold and it's exponential. Now, with that kind of change, one thing that has not changed is the need for a healthy psychological safety environment and a healthy organization culture. And as a response to that, and even as an offshoot of this particular initiative or the need is also the need for innovation, because we live in the world of artificial intelligence. And going forward, this is only going to get more fast-paced approach as well. Now, we need to understand it, that psychological safety, how it fosters innovation or creates a room for innovation to happen. How it is defined, I believe a centralized definition would be somewhere along the lines where the team members or organization members feel comfortable enough to share or voice their interpersonal risks and the risk-taking. So by that, what I mean, if I feel I'm unable to achieve something, I may be choking on something, I should be comfortable enough to come to you as a team member, my manager or my colleague, say, you know what, I'm unable to do this. Rather than being judged against it, I am more comfortable in voicing out because I understand that there will be rather support rather than judgmental, perhaps eyes on me. And that is where we are focusing on in order to establish a culture where you're safe to voice your weaknesses and also put forth your strengths for others to fill the gap of weaknesses, perhaps in your team or in your other divisional responsibilities of other people, but even have that cross-divisional interaction. Because we are looking at the organization as a whole over here rather than just specific elements. So it is rather coming down to how safe you as an organization member feel voicing your concerns or basically showing your risks and how they might have gone wrong and how you could correct them and having support against that.
Absolutely. And speaking, as you said, about it, at the end of the day, it's not just about one or two people, it's about the organization as a whole. It's a holistic point of view. And to link it between psychological safety and another major aspect of an organization, which is the decision-making aspect of things, can you elaborate on how psychological safety can influence the decision-making process and how, if it does, foster innovation within teams?
See, decision making is important over here, and how psychological safety comes into the picture here is it helps you create a collaborative environment, right? Now, when you have collaboration, decision making becomes easy. There are several types of styles under leadership or decision making approaches, right? But the most effective of it is the one that takes collaboration at its heart. True. And collaboration comes only when you're able to come forth with all your downsides and upsides and say, okay, this is how I feel about it. And then your colleague does the same, and other members of the group, and this group could be organization, could be team. So I'm just using the word group for as a just general statement. But you should come across in a very comfortable way in order to create that collaborative environment. And so it promotes, psychological safety promotes collaboration, and hence adds value to making sound decision-making, effective decision-making, and perhaps also because now you have fostered a collaborative environment, you have more data input because I'm open to sharing that data, absolutely, correct? So you become a more data-driven organization, which is key to going forward in modern economy.
Absolutely. And as you said, about how important psychological safety is, let's look at one of the major issues that do cause the need for psychological safety in the first place. That's corporate bullying, right? So could you explain, the main signs or the implications of corporate bullying, and how does it affect not only the individual, but as well as the overall organizational culture?
Okay. So let's define what corporate bullying is, right? Corporate bullying, if you go with the several definitions, I mean, you could go a Google definition or a Thor's definition, Oxford definition, Webster, whatever that may be. But where it comes down to, it is any particular behavior that say infuses or induces harm, health harming to the other individual, and is targeted in nature, right? So, for example, you have someone in the team that is very communicative, collaborative, and very contributive as well. And let's say this particular individual, you keep them turning down. Like, your work wasn't good enough, go back and do this. So initially, it could be misinterpreted as, okay, maybe he's looking at, from a growth perspective, that he's pushing me for growth. So a lot of individuals intend to stay quiet about it because they see it as a growth opportunity. Perhaps this particular individual, be it manager or otherwise, is actually perhaps pushing me so I could push my horizons, my boundaries, my mindset, and become better and grow personally and professionally. But then over time, a repeated behavior such induces negative thinking, negative, let's say, thought process. And it demotivates the person. And in turn, you're not only harming the particular person in the process, but your team, because that kind of behavior is contagious, and the team absorbs and observes such behaviors, and also then many team members could resonate that with themselves, and then even from an organization perspective. So it could lead to a resignation of that particular person and loss of talent. Mm-hmm. And if you look at it at a grander scheme of things, attrition rates could increase, demotivation, discouragement, for example. Mental health and well-being is key because it has a potential to have greater levels of stress. Yeah. And as a result, it has a potential also to harm not only from a professional perspective, but mental well-being and mental health, right? There are numerous studies done about this, and as little as leaving someone out in an email communication, you don't copy that particular person who could be or who is or who needs to be part of the conversation, but you exclude that person. It triggers the area in your brain which is associated with physical pain. So you could see the impact of a mental health, mental well-being, let's say, what it could have an impact on a person, because your brain perceives it as a physical pain. So it's pretty serious in nature. However, we need to be aware of what perhaps our actions could induce in other people in terms of reaction or impact, and others to ours as well. So at the end of the day, corporate bullying is something that it needs to be addressed. It needs to be a lot of us perhaps go through it, never highlighting it for the same reason as we may interpret it as a growth potential.
True.
And a lot of us who actually unintentionally also practice it on other people should be aware in terms of what my actions can result into.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that you mentioned, the fact that it's not just the leader who ends up bullying it; it's contagious. That type of workplace culture is contagious. Next thing you know, people you work with in the same level may start, piling things on you or just taking you for granted as well.
As they say, you're some of the 7% you're with
Around you, yes.
And similarly, if I laugh now, and I laugh for enough time, could be a minute, could be 10, depending on your threshold of how much you can tolerate, but you will laugh with me.
Absolutely.
Right? And if you put someone in an environment which is depressed, over time, you will get depressed with me as well. And for no apparent reason, it's just because your environment around you is such. And hence, it is important from that perspective to create that kind of environment, which is rather thriving in nature than where you have to strive just to survive.
Exactly. So as you said, when it comes, it all does start with the leader's position and the role that they play in that. And speaking of which, talking about the leader's role in the workplace, how pivotal is the role of leadership in fostering an environment of psychological safety? And could you share some strategies that leaders could adopt to ensure that every member of their team feels valued and heard?
See, leaders are crucial to this role because at the end of the day, it's them who are enforcing a certain culture, be it in a team, because your manager is the leader of your team, right? And the CEO is a leader of the organization. So leadership positions may be in different contexts, but at the end of the day, in terms of what influence they can have over their team, and that team could be 12,000 employees, or could be 12 employees, or could be 2 employees. It has profound impact on those individuals who are working with you in the journey, in the professional journey, and they are the ones who promote open communication in the process and openness, right? They are the ones who also induce a culture of, let's say, risk-taking, make mistakes, and they're the ones who even establish thresholds of tolerance. So if the thresholds of tolerance are very low, that means you have very low appetite and tolerance for risk-taking, which means I'm less likely to voice anything because I know that if I voice something at the moment, right now, I will be perhaps rather judged because my team doesn't have the tolerance for that. So leaders are crucial. They're the ones who promote and foster openness in the team. And that needs to be communicated in all sorts, non-verbal, verbal cues, policies, procedures, whatever that may be, because that's how leaders communicate downward, right? And that culture needs to be established.
Absolutely.
And through that, that is how you also enforce a culture of innovation.
Very true.
And without which your organization, especially in today's world, and as we head into post-ChatGPT era, I would say, is crucial. Without which innovation doesn't thrive, and innovation eventually dies. Again, when you see it from a curve perspective for organization, then you have diminishing returns.
Yes, absolutely. And okay, so as you said, with respect to the leader as such, I think the gist of it would be to become the example for everyone else.
So they must also, and everyone is a leader in their context, right? So, for example, I may work, could be as a consultant, could be as as an employee in an organization. I may work with someone. In order to exhibit leadership skills, I don't need to be leader in a leadership position.
Very true.
And this is important to understand because a lot of individuals today would say, okay, I'm not managing people. Why should I be doing that? But your behavior could become an influencing factor for those around you, regardless of them reporting to you or not, or they being part of the team or not. So you must lead by example, showcase vulnerability, showcase that you make mistakes too, right? Now, the moment you put yourself in that shoe, everyone else will be comfortable doing that. Now, if I have someone who never makes mistakes, and the moment I make a mistake, I'm like, should I voice it out? It's going to be seen, right? That comfort level goes away. And there's no one who doesn't make mistakes. So even leaders perhaps should come forth, and your managers or you as a manager say, you know what, I made a mistake. Let's go back and see what we can do to fix this. And that promotes a culture of vulnerability where it would make other team members also comfortable in order to practice what the leader is preaching as well.
True. And now that we've spoken about the leaders side of things, let's switch to the employees side of things. What can employees do to promote mutual respect and also challenge behaviors or hold people accountable for behaviors that threaten the safety? Like, for example, if there's corporate bullying happening, what are things that employees can do to challenge that or hold people accountable for it?
Absolutely. So employees are the ones who are practicing the culture and who are blending into the culture, and they're also the ones who bring culture.
Yes.
Right? Employees from different walks of life will bring their own ideologies, perhaps professional experiences, perhaps personal experiences. And it's important to understand, you may have theoretical approach to things. You might have policies in place, procedures in place. You might have certain way of culture exertion coming from the top and assertion, but employees are the ones who drive. They're much more comfortable with each other than they are in the hierarchy, right? Now, what employees must do also is also foster that kind of environment by, for example, to play a role in a psychological safe environment, to foster that kind of environment. They must also, for example, relate to someone who might be going through a trouble phase in life, professionally or otherwise, which is impacting the work of that person. Be supportive, voice concerns on their behalf. Perhaps a lot of times employees could highlight, that there's an issue here. How can we fix it for him, for her, or for the team, or how it may be. Now, what the main responsibilities are is also that they must challenge the behaviors in an organization that are rather detriment to psychologically safe environment. A lot of times, silence, and we have, across the board, most of the organizations, if not all, have whistleblowing policies and so forth. And this is part of psychologically safe environment, that there is an avenue, right, to resort to. But in the general practice terms, number one is, I think, two elements are important for employees. One is fostering a culture by action, so by practice, and then also challenging the behaviors that are detrimental or perhaps harming to a safe environment. So employees have that responsibility as a practice as well. Now, if you become passive, then the changing culture will come back and haunt you as well. So today, it may be something very small. Everything is like a flare. And the moment, a flare ignites, we all have heard about the bushfires, for example. How does it start?
Just one spark.
One spark. And then it spreads across the forest or so. And that's exactly how a bad or toxic culture could be. That one spark, if we let it spark, and we say, okay, it's just one spark. I mean, it's not going to have any impact or a significant impact. But that spark then becomes a flame, which becomes a bushfire.
Absolutely.
And that's what employees have a moral responsibility, perhaps, to ensure that such culture does not overshadow the openness of communication and a psychologically safe environment.
Absolutely. And just sticking on the topic of employees, just diverging a bit though, do you feel personally that many of the reasons as to why not just indulging in corporate bullying but also staying quiet stems from the need to fit in or also, the fear of, as you said, the fear of taking it up to the higher ups and stuff like that?
Absolutely. So a lot of organizations and a lot of settings, I mean, not talking only about professional settings, personal settings also, you want to perhaps fit in with your friends, depending on what phase of life you are. You're a teenager, you want to do that. You become rebellious to your parents, for example, right? We've all been there.
Still am.
So you would more relate to your friends and you would say, that's how I want to be, so I could fit into that group. Now you put that into organizational context. You want to fit into the team or the organization. If an organization's culture is already on a toxic threshold, let's say, and that's very subjective, right? But just for the example sake, then that particular employee then, in order to fit in, could take a passive stance. But understand one thing, that your silence today will also in a way push you or quell you to be silent later when you are the subject,
Exactly.
right? And that could be a year later, that could be 5 years later, depending on when that time comes. But eventually, that time does come, and you want to ensure that when that time does come, the environment is in a much better state than when you joined.
Very true.
So, hence, your contribution is essential. Fitting in is great, but fitting in an ethical and right way, right? See, goals can be achieved, and there's nothing in the world that an individual cannot achieve, be it from a financial perspective, career perspective, social perspective. Everything as a human being can be achieved. How you achieve it, that is the art.
True.
And that is where focus needs to be. I do not want to become a millionaire by doing shady things.
True.
But I want to become a millionaire by doing the right thing.
Exactly.
That will be my pride. And that's how perhaps even corporate culture should be approached. That how do I influence the culture as an individual in my capacity in order for it to be better.
True.
Right? And you'd be surprised, most of the organizations are open to those ideas because everyone's looking at productivity levels and psychologically safe environment. There have been numerous studies conducted, right, where psychologically safe environments have actually produced higher productivity levels, better profitability, better revenues, better sales, longer tenure of employees, and one of the lowest attritions in the industry. If you have a psychologically safe environment, from a money sense as well, as a shareholder, it makes sense to me. Why won't I have that kind of environment if it saves me money? And it not only saves me money, but even generates more for me.
Yes.
So it has monetary benefits, and it has social benefits, and it has other contextual benefits as well.
It's virtually zero risk and high yield. It's
Absolutely. I mean,
best possible way.
that is a perfect investment, right?
Exactly. What else do you need? In that case.
Absolutely.
And looking at now, we've looked at it, from the leadership point of view, the decision making, and of course the employee's point of view. But beyond both the decision making and preventing the bullying aspect of things, what are some broader benefits organizations can expect from investing in psychological safety, as we'd already just shadowed upon?
Correct.
And how does it impact aspects like employee engagement, turnover rates, and business performance in just a bit more detail?
So studies have suggested that psychologically safe environments have generated much greater engagement by the employees with their work, with their organization. The sense of belonging increases and relatability increases. And when you have a sense of belonging, you give your best,
Absolutely.
right? Which in turn then translates into high productivity levels.
True.
And that is important because as an organization, what do I want out of you? If I'm paying you $10 or 10 dirhams, let's say, right? Generating 20 is what my goal is.
Exactly.
I may be generating 15 out of you now, but I know if I can generate 20 by providing you with with a certain environment, and that environment comes at no cost. Essentially, it's just about fostering the culture or low cost, I would say. It makes a total sense to invest in it, and it's studies have also shown that these type of behaviors, when these type of cultures are fostered, the profitability of the entity increases multiple folds, and it has higher probability of long-term success as well as short-term gains. So, from an investor perspective or a leader perspective, for me, it makes total sense. Like, in order to foster such an environment, in order to drive shareholder value,
True.
in order to drive productivity for employees and happiness levels, lower attrition as a result, because attrition is one of the major costs a lot of organizations go through. And if you could reduce that, then
Absolutely.
this is one of the most effective ways of doing it.
Perfect. So before we finalize and wrap up, are there any parting words you'd like to share with the audience?
I think the topic of psychological safety, and corporate bullying has to be seen in the light of mental health and well-being as well. It has the impact of physical health effects as well. I mean, all of us, when extremely stressed. I mean, this is me. I don't know about others, but I get pain in my stomach when there's high stress levels. So there is a physical pain associated with that when I'm not okay. And it's important to realize as an individual that I'm not okay. And it's important for the people I work with to create a culture where I can go to them and say, I'm not okay, and I need to be okay. And be vulnerable. And in that process, having the comfort and assurance that I will be supported is key. Post-pandemic, I mean, well-being and mental health has been at the forefront, right, in our endeavors of doing anything. I mean, we had hotlines set up also in the UAE, assisting a lot of individuals with mental health challenges through the pandemic. And it became even a subject in organizations. A lot of organizations rolled out mental health and well-being programs post-pandemic right away to help employees overcome their challenges and also reintegrate to work after the lockdowns. You have to understand that there is a mental health element to it. And there are monetary benefits of doing that. I mean, we usually are confronted with questions like, oh, this is a cost. Why should I be investing time or money into this where I could be selling my products and getting higher revenues? But this is one of the areas where you can actually achieve your goal while also not putting a lot of effort into or dollars into actually selling more. A lot of studies also have suggested that not only that the sales increases and revenues for the organization, but the market share. So you want to grab a greater market share, that's how you do it.
Absolutely.
I believe it was a quote by someone, I wouldn't take their name because I'm a little hazy in terms of who quoted this. But someone had said, where if you keep your employees happy, your employees will keep your customers happy, right? But if your employees are not happy and are not comfortable and not in a safe environment, then how can they translate that into keeping your customers happy? And in customers could be anything, right? You're in services industry, it's your clients, you're in products industry, they're your retail customers or otherwise. But that's important. So all you have to do is take care of your employees, and then your employees will take care of your customers.
Absolutely.
That's about it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. And there you have it. In a world where we're slowly yet surely understanding the relevance of psychological well-being at both home and work, it is important to ensure we are equipped with the technical know-how to execute the same. And we hope today's episode has helped our listeners take a step in the right direction. Thank you so much for your time today, Hassan.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure to have you as well. To our listeners, if you would like to share your own experiences or ask us any questions, feel free to reach out to us on LUBM Middle East on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and we can continue the conversation online. Until next time, I'm Amaan Iqbal Ibrahim, and keep learning with Smart Talks powered by Lincoln University of Business Management. Thank you, and have a great day ahead.